Hello gentlemen, this is Marcel back again. So for today I want to discuss this concept of no true Scotsman, no real MGTOW. Now, what exactly do I mean by that? So lately I've been noticing some fairly troubling things. At least as far as I'm concerned, they could be, but not for the reasons you might suspect. There have been an alarming number of people using the MGTOW title on their videos when there's not necessarily any MGTOW content in them. Men using the title to draw in clicks for their videos only to turn around and try and sell people stuff. Even men claiming to be MGTOW and yet not behaving in ways that would go along with the philosophy. Of course, granted, depending on where you stand on certain key topics. So I really wanted to take an opportunity to sit back and share my viewpoint on all of this that I think would alleviate a lot of these problems, at least from a greater perspective. Firstly, allow me to make a suggestion, and I call it that because there are going to be a great number of people that will disagree with me, and that's fine. MGTOW should not be a class of people. By that I mean, MGTOW is not something that you are, or that we are, it's something that we do. It's a viewpoint on life. Most importantly, it's an accumulation of ideas, concepts, even advice that can be passed on from man to man to ultimately make us all stronger. Things that can be discussed, even debated over in a rational, logical sense until it can be honed like a sharp edge to the point where we can all agree on it and benefit from it, almost from a scientific perspective. I've heard a number of people claiming that someone who has an idea that they disagree with within the MGTOW community is therefore not a real MGTOW somehow because of that disagreement. And with that, other things that they have said can be devalued or disregarded because of that disagreement. The tarnishing of one's title almost becomes a weapon wielded against those whom someone might disagree with. By separating the message from the person, we can actually discuss the validity of what is being said, as opposed to bickering over labels. So there are no MGTOW people, as far as I'm concerned. There is merely MGTOW advice, ideology, philosophy, whatever you want to call it. But without there being a MGTOW person, there is no individuals to point fingers at. I almost picture it as if there were a huge book sitting in front of me that all of us have contributed to, and it's titled MGTOW. We pass it around and we all make adjustments and add to it and make it bigger and stronger and more complex. But it is not us. It is a book. It is knowledge, experience, and wisdom. Furthermore, in regards to the MGTOW message itself, in essence, it's fairly straightforward. Take agency over your own life, don't let people manipulate you, and seek out your own dreams, your own goals. Prioritize yourself, as after all, it is your own life. Feel free to disagree with me on that if you choose. It's simply the way I see it. The ability to choose one's own path is the greatest form of self-awareness, even freedom, and far too often that's the very first thing that gets taken away from men. Where we start to get into the weeds of that discussion is when people start trying to claim that any man's path should be the one true path as opposed to any of the others. That completely defeats the purpose. One of my sergeants came up to me years ago and said, "Marcel, you really shouldn't let people walk over you so much. Don't only do what people tell you to. Go make your own path, make your own choices, and be your own man." I looked at him calmly and with a faint smile said, "Okay, Sergeant, but only because you told me to." His only reply to that was touche. I cannot judge any man by their actions while telling them to choose their own path, nor should anyone else. This is why I try to frame everything I say here as advice, and give the best options I can to help people with their decisions that they make through life. In any case, it's more a matter of possibilities, probabilities, and the likelihood of some things happening. If a man marries a feminist, he's very likely to get fucked. I'm sure anyone not a feminist will likely agree with that. But his choice of actions is more a matter of poor life decisions, and not a signal as to whether or not he is on a MGTOW path or is ultimately red-pilled. Knowing that the house cheats doesn't doesn't mean that a man can't sit down and still play cards. The only time that I have an issue with it is when they turn around and try and frame it as that's good advice to do so, most likely to just remain in favor within our community. We all need to have courage and take responsibility for our mistakes. That is what it is to be a man, meaning it's a positive trait within human nature. Finally, in regards to people using the MGTOW labels to sell things, or even using it when it has nothing to do with the video content, I've actually seen several channels recently where I've played through a few of their videos and they have no red pill concepts built into them. It's all either extremely vague or even has absolutely nothing to do with going your own way. I try to always make it a point, if my video topic is not related directly to us, or at least even indirectly, I won't use the labels on it just to keep the message more pure. Maybe it would be better to call it clear. Nonetheless, getting that kind of garbage does break down the ability of people to find the messages that they're ultimately looking for, the content that they either need or just want to see. I can't figure why anyone is surprised. People often use names and labels that are important or popular just to give their videos more attention. Years ago, how many people clicked on a Britney Spears dance video only to find that it was somebody's kid sister dancing and that the whole point was to draw them in for the click? Our ideology or philosophy is becoming very powerful. The title carries weight. The best thing people can do if they disagree that the message was labeled properly is don't watch the video. Now, it's possible to dislike it, but, ultimately, likes and dislikes are both framed in a positive metric within the YouTube community. Even a dislike implies engagement. When I get less dislikes than I did in the previous month, there's a sad little red arrow saying I didn't get as much attention as I did the previous month. Believe it or not, there is a market in being a troll within YouTube. The only other thing I can think of is that a person could click not interested when it comes to getting promoted these videos that don't have anything to do with our community. Though that also means the person clicking it won't see any more content like that, so it's a double-edged sword, boiling down to algorithms. However, if the person's content really had no validity in the first place, then it won't have any effect, meaning on what the person clicking will ultimately see. Nonetheless, if I've understood it correctly, enough people clicking not interested on a video that is ultimately toxic or not helpful will stop it from trending. When a video title doesn't draw in the attention that it's supposed to, people are going to stop using it. Nonetheless, and I don't want to sound cliche here, turning your head and ignoring the videos that ultimately have nothing to do with us is the best course of action. Watch time is the most valuable asset. I would argue that it's more important than likes or dislikes even. So there's nothing wrong with diming them out, but I would phrase it in a context that we don't send them more viewers and more clicks, basically more attention for what they're doing. Part of the reason why I never actually dime people out for what they do. I just state whether or not I think that sort of action is a good or bad idea, whether or not I agree with that kind of advice. Furthermore, if I may put on a tinfoil hat for a moment, there is also the possibility that there may be feminists in our midst, people, or men especially, that do not believe or agree with that which we say and do, that may be inclined to make their own sloppy little pathetic MGTOW channels and try to say that they're pushing our message when they're not. Essentially, they're just very complex, dedicated puppet accounts. The goal is to establish just enough subscribers and people, a following based around hearing the same repeated concepts within their channel, so they repeat the same thing other prominent MGTOW have said, and then get a bunch of subscribers and then turn around and toxify the pool. Basically make us look bad. It's not as hard as it sounds. We need to pay attention to what a person is actually bringing to the table in the form of experiences and advice. That is where you judge a person's content. Not to contradict what I said earlier about a man choosing his own path. That is different from what he suggests other men should do. That, my friends, is the key. And finally, this concept of men using the MGTOW label to sell people shit. Now, there's a big difference between having a call to action, for example, at the end of a video, or having a product that you want to recommend within the community because you think it's actually going to help people. A year ago, before I was ever a creator, I would have said, don't solicit anything. There's no need for it. But honestly, people do need to survive. And considering the time and effort that people put into their videos, if they want to try to sell hot dogs and t-shirts at the end of it, that's on them. Now, not including videos that are obviously framed for promoting a particular product, for example, TFM's sex toy reviews, which are hilarious and labeled properly. If the bulk of their message has nothing to do with our philosophy, they should get those tags off of it. In essence, they're clickbaiting for their own ads. We could either ignore their videos or not buy their products for one, but if they've got a good solid message beforehand, and that's something I would almost phrase as advice to any other creators, if you're gonna offer something, do it at like the end of your video. Front load the stuff that people actually clicked for to where it's obvious that that's your message, that's what you're trying to give to them, whether it's entertainment or otherwise. Put it up front. Make it 90% of the content of the video, and then if there's an ad or a recommendation or a product, throw it at the end. That way people don't misunderstand what your channel is actually all about. Odds are if somebody's wanting to build their own MGTOW channel, they're probably going to click on videos like the one I'm making right now, so that message might actually get through to them. Having said that, I don't see any issues with people that want to have a call to action at the end of their video, or wherever it's appropriate, to kind of balance out the effort that they put into making it. It takes me about 4 hours to make one of these videos. They're a lot of work. Sometimes I spend days thinking about the concepts before I actually start recording anything. Most, maybe 90% of the content that I listen to from other creators is entirely worth having to sit through a little ad or two at the end of it. I just don't want to have to hear one long 10-minute ad. I think most of us can agree on that. Anyway, that's about all I have to say on this topic for today, for now. Trying to define and discuss what we're doing here is probably one of the most difficult videos to make. All the same, I want your input. Tell me down below what you think, what you've seen. And for those commenting about my outro songs, I'll bring them back. I'm trying to balance my energies between my channel and my music and various other things. For a while, I just prioritized my videos. In the meantime, like, share, subscribe. This has been Marcel.